Hey, welcome to the show, Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. I'm Arif Halaby along with Jeff Gerard, and we have a special guest here as well. You get a chance to learn a little bit about some of the more important parts of life called time management. And also, how do you kind of build a part in your family's finances and literally work for you? Now, look, it might sound a little funny, but Total Financial Solutions, we're a financial firm. Our job is to kind of help you get out of debt, manage money, plan for your retirement. And we're doing so in a way that's very important because it centers on you. And because of this, over the 13 and a half years on the air, our objective over the, I guess, what are we at, 200 radio shows or something.
Yep.
Our objective has always been to focus on helping you get better so that you work for yourself. Yes, you might have a job. Yes, you might work for a company. I understand all of that. But at the end of the day, you made sure that you went to the grocery store. You made sure that you bought gasoline. You made sure that the dry cleaner, all of those people, their children will go to college. Don't you worry about them. They'll have wonderful vacations. Let me tell you, that little nice dining restaurant that you go to on Friday nights, it's a great place. Yeah? They're going to take a wonderful summer vacation. So meanwhile, you went to work, you made sure your car is gassed up, you made sure your groceries list is complete, and who worked for you? The hardest thing is to look at the end of the day and say, I have worked my life making, let's just do the math. I'm going to be basic here, right? We'll just say $50,000 a year. Most of you are probably earning a lot more than that, but let's just say over 20 years you've earned $50,000 a year. That's 22 times, right? That's $1 million. Now, I understand there's taxes, but if $1 million has gone through your hands over the last 20 years, can you explain to me why you have $800 in your checking account? Can you explain to me why your retirement account is $4,000 or whatever? You fill in the numbers. I mean, you get the point. The point is somebody has paid you, trusted you, rewarded you with a dollar figure over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Who is working for yourself? Well, my contention is a lot of it is built on one thing and one thing only, and that is time management and time value. And to understand that, we brought our special guest here today. His name is Ara Norwood. Ara, welcome to the show.
Good to be here with you.
Hey, tell me a little bit about time management. Let's start with just basically, like, what is time management and how does that all work?
Well, essentially, it is getting things accomplished that you want to get accomplished. Most of us end up getting things done that are very small in terms of impact, but very few people think through carefully how they want to structure their day and how they want to structure their life in a way that has them having impact on a day-by-day basis, not just an occasional basis.
Okay.
If I had to sum it up, I would say it's about organizing and executing around priorities.
So let's talk about that, because for a lot of people, their priorities are built around one thing, and that is the easiest first. Usually from a procrastinator's point of view, they say, well, I'm going to get the easy ones out of the way first, just so I have time to focus on the more complicated and difficult things. That's not always the right thing to do.
Actually, it rarely is the right thing to do, Arif. They usually end up doing it exactly backwards. The little things can wait, and they usually chew up your time. What I find is that when you figure out what your most substantive target tasks are for the day, and you focus on those high leverage activities first, that's where we end up having the most impact, and that's where we end up having the most fulfillment in our lives. So people have got to be really clear about what is important to them, what really matters, what is significant, and not just what is expedient. Focus on that first, and the little things will usually take care of themselves.
And when we say the cornerstone of what we're doing being how do we make sure that that we prioritize, what is the prioritization? How do we know what's the most important?
Well, fortunately, people get to decide that for themselves. I like to start off with figuring out what are your deepest values. And once you know what your values are, you can start to develop a sense of mission, a sense of purpose. Some people actually put together a mission statement, a personal mission statement, as the same as corporations often do. And once you know what your mission statement is, your values are, if you're clear about your roles, at that point you can start setting high-level goals that are in harmony with your roles and your deepest aspirations. Major league roles, things that are daunting, things that are exciting, things that galvanize you. Once you have those large goals set and you're really clear about it, now you find you start breaking those things down into much more granular, bite-sized chunks, and you have projects and tasks you focus on that support those goals you find at the end of the day, when you really focus intelligently on those things for a sustained period of time, usually you will attain them eventually.
And through the process of knowing when to give up, because sometimes we have that closet or that garage or that desk, or it can be anything. I'm thinking of the cleanup or the backyard or the storage shed. We can go on, where people will send their lives, trying to anyway, go through and say, how do I create the blocks of time that it's going to take to get this done, to get this project done? Or maybe it's a class project, right? I think one of the things I learned in college that I didn't learn in high school was the time management and proper study skills. Study habits. School was pretty easy for me, high school. It was fairly simple. I took honors classes most of the time, but it was easy. Man, when I got to college, did I feel like I couldn't just walk through and walk into the test.
You're not alone. A lot of people go through that. I did myself.
Yeah, it was a big deal. I had to go backwards and I had to say, oh my gosh, I never got a C in my life. I got to figure out how to get this, rectified back to an A, because that was my standard. So I had to think about that, and one of those was time management, prioritization, and there wasn't anybody back then, at least for a little old Sylmar kid, to sit down and say, hey, can you mentor me? Can you help guide me? Can you direct me? So how do we find out those answers that we know that we're putting the right amount of time and the right effort in the right place?
Sure. Let me address two things. The first has to do with, how do you go about managing your time on a regular basis? What works for me is every Sunday evening at 8 o'clock, I lock myself in my home office, and people know not to disturb me during that time. And what I'm doing in that 20 to 40 minute window of time is I'm reconnecting with my values, my mission, my roles. I revisit my major goals for the year or life goals that are from a larger target duration. But also what I do is I look at the week. I look at the 7-day window that is about to come upon us, starting with the next day being Monday. And I ask myself the question, okay, for this particular role as a college professor, for example, or this particular role as a management consultant, or this particular role as a professional musician, what would be one of the most important things I could do within the next 7 days that would have the biggest positive impact on that particular role? So that becomes a major task, what some would call a big rock. It was popularized by the late Stephen R. Covey. And then I asked myself the question, okay, where will I schedule that big rock? Where will I schedule that major initiative during the week? It's got to go in the calendar the way any appointment would go in the calendar. That way it's locked in, it's scheduled, and the likelihood is much higher that it's actually going to take place.
Okay, so now we have a way of looking at something that we say this is now a priority. And when it's a priority, what if you have 6 priorities? How do you have 8 priorities? How do we know? One of the things that really helped me back then, as I was trying to learn through this whole process, was the Franklin Planner. In fact, and you mentioned Covey, and so that reminded me. In the Franklin Planner, if some of you go back and kind of learn, it was actually a system to give yourself A, B's, and C's, I think if I remember right. And then it was A1, A2, A3. Do you subscribe to that same kind of philosophy?
It's not a bad philosophy. I don't exactly subscribe to that particular philosophy to this day, but I'm familiar with the Franklin Planner organizer. I used to use it myself for many, many years. What I do instead is to make sure I don't get overwhelmed with too many priorities is although I have the week mapped out and I have the key initiatives scheduled in my calendar, on a daily basis, I might have 2 to 5 major tasks I want to get done that day. I don't like to have more than about 2 to 5. That way I have a very small number that is very manageable, and I know that whatever interruptions come up, whatever might derail me, once I get back on my horse, it's these 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 things that have got to get done today, and that way the distractions don't leave me bewildered, wondering, gee, what do I do next? I know what I need to do. So I keep my to-dos on a daily basis to a bare minimum. Now, I have a much larger list of pending things that need to get done, but the list of today is quite short by design.
Interesting. When we come back, guys, I want to get into what is it going to take for you to start with goal setting, and more importantly, what if that emergency pops up? In a day, of pre-planned things. It rarely happens where you are kind of building your life and everything goes according to plan and you can, go to sleep at exactly the time. Sometimes emergencies pop up, especially if you have children. My goodness, or if you run a business or if you have anybody that reports to you as an employee or employer. Sometimes your life is just get a little hectic. When we come back, we're going to cover that and a whole lot more. My name is Arif Halaby, along with Jeff Gerard and special guest Era Norwood, time management, goal-setting expert. We'll get to a little bit of a pedigree in him when we return on Your Place. For News Talk and Information, this is AM 1220 KHTS.